Welcome to another episode of Talk Music Talk. I'm your host, I'm Boice, and this is my podcast. It's a music and what else can we say about it? It's a music podcast, right? Where I interview people from all backgrounds of music because I love pretty much every type of music. I talk to musicians, authors, journalists, whatever. Anybody can talk about music. On today's episode, I am having a wonderful discussion with Daniel Givens. Daniel and I are discussing his top 10 or 10 of his favorite albums from 2014. And I know Daniel because he works at Other Music, which is a record store here in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, and highly prestigious record store. I believe Bjork shops there or has shopped there. Anyway, my gym is across the street from him, and being that I have gotten back into vinyl over this past year, I need a vinyl store to go into, and this is one of them, and it's a great place to shop in. And I was familiar with Daniel because when you go to the Other Music website, they have reviews of the albums, and I found myself purchasing albums based solely on Daniel's reviews, like Nana Cherry's Blank Project album, for example, and also Shabazz Palaces, which we talk about during the interview. So I figured I had to have this guy on. If he's influencing me that much, why not talk to him? Now, a couple of days before the interview, I was doing my research, Googled him, which is my research, and I saw that Daniel didn't just work at Other Music. He has a whole bunch of other things he does. He is a poet, musician, author, artist, just a totally creative person. So I wanted to talk to him about his career, his artistic career. So we do that first before going into his favorite albums, which was a lot of fun to talk to. He knows everything there is to know about music. Now, the songs, we don't actually play the songs, but I have created a Spotify playlist, which you'll find in the show notes. It has all his favorite releases, plus some of his own music, which is really wonderful. You should check that out. And make sure you stick around after the show for Coda for some last-minute tidbits here on Talk Music Talk. Without further ado, this is my interview with Daniel Givens, and because we talk so much, this is a longer interview than usual. But anyway, I hope you enjoy it. Daniel Givens here on Talk Music Talk. I'm here with Daniel Givens. Daniel, how you doing today?
I'm great.
Good, good. We're going to talk about your top 10 favorite albums of 2014.
Okay.
Yes. But I didn't know I was doing my deep research. Well, my crack team was doing my research. Crack team meaning me.
Right.
Yeah. So I didn't know you were a poet, MC, and all that different stuff.
Yeah, I've done a lot of things, I guess, in my time or through the years. Started off as an art student in Columbia and Chicago, studying film and photography and fiction writing. And then that sort of... Well, let me backtrack just a second.
Okay.
I was born in Chicago. At the age of 12, moved to Milwaukee.
Okay.
Went to high school in Milwaukee. Moved back to Chicago. So then I went back to Chicago to go to Columbia College to study film photography and fiction writing. And through my experience there, I started working at Gramophone Records, which is a record store there. Also, my older brother was a DJ growing up, so I grew up around that. And once I started working at Gramophone, I never thought of myself as a DJ, but I liked music. Grew up in music, appreciating records, and appreciated the culture and respected DJs. So through the years, after a while, people started to ask me to play gigs. Yeah. So then that started my DJ career. Okay. And then that sort of led into me working with, at the same time I knew a lot of jazz musicians in the city and indie rock musicians. And I was really interested in trying to develop this fusion of DJing, but also incorporating live musicians as well as projections and video, and trying to make it like a full immersed experience. And had different opportunities to do that in bars, in venues, in performance spaces, in lofts through the years in Chicago. And that began, my DJ career. And then through that sort of led to a deal to make a record by a small label called Aesthetics.
When was this?
When was this?
Yeah.
This was through the 90s.
Okay.
Basically. So I returned to Chicago in 91, and then by 99 was making a record.
Oh, okay, great.
Making my first record called Age that came out in 2000. So I was doing those type of things, got that opportunity through, someone just coming to hear me DJ. Quite often it liked sort of my angle, or, I never really was interested in house music. I always, even though I kind of grew up around it, my brother was a house DJ, and Gramophone was a house music store. I never wanted to play house because I felt like I respected those DJs and that craft and the music, but I also felt like there were a lot of other people doing it. And I felt like there was a lot of other music out there that I really responded to. Okay. Even though, like, I would say my foundation, or, what I grew up listening to was house, but then also, like, a lot of experimental things from Art of Noise and Tom Tom Club, or, Talking Heads, or Liquid, or, that kind of stuff. So I always felt like there was other music out there that I wanted to explore and to provide to listeners, to an audience. So that gave me the opportunity then to play chill-out rooms at raves. Okay. More like alternative spaces. Like, wasn't like the headlining room, which I was completely fine with. Like, I didn't want to have the pressure of making people dance and, like, that be my whole motivation for DJing. I wanted to take people on journeys. I wanted to explore different sounds, combine things that you wouldn't necessarily feel would go together. Okay. But I felt like had some sort of similarities, blending jazz records and dub records, or ambient records with, like, spiritualized or something like that. Like, just really mixing with the form, or exploring the form. So that led me to other opportunities. And then my music, I felt, reflected that in a way. Had a dance mentality, but it wasn't dance music. Yeah. And since I had a interest in writing, fiction writing, and I also conducted interviews for this gay zine in Chicago called Gag for a couple of years. Did reviews for them, did interviews for them. So all that stuff, I wanted to explore, and I still continue to explore. Once I moved to New York, which was around 2000, I started working at other music, released 3 more records for the label. The label has since kind of folded, or sort of is on Aesthetics. Okay. Sort of on a really extended hiatus. Unfortunately. But, through those things, and then also being in New York, like, I had the opportunity to write a play that was performed at St. Mark's Church called First Dark Drama.
What was the play about?
It was about multiple things. It was about being in New York pre, during, and post 9/11. Okay. But also, a little bit of my personal history. My time in Milwaukee, I experienced, the death of a really close friend to the hands of Jeffrey Dahmer. Okay. Oh, really? Yeah, the serial killer, like, literally, yeah. One of my teenage friends, and one of the first people that I started to work with to make music, wound up being killed. Okay. Like my senior year in high school. So the play First Dark Drama dealt with those two sort of dark themes and fused those, and it definitely explored, like, how do you be in love in a time of terror. Okay. So dealt with those issues, and for me it was really therapeutic because it let me flush out a lot. It let me fuse all these things I was interested in, from the writing to the visuals to movement to sound to acting, let me fuse all that together, and then also let me sort of release these thoughts and this material and these words, and feel like I've, like dealing with those type of issues. Like for me, it was always very fragmented, and then that project allowed it to solidify into like this form. Then I could say this is it, and then sort of put it away. Instead of still dealing with these forms, all of a sudden it gelled into something.
How were you dealing with it, or how did it manifest?
It manifested in definitely 2 albums worth of material.
First, personally, like day to day, or how were you dealing with it?
The Dahmer thing I didn't address at the time. I was like 17 when it happened, and I didn't really know how to deal with it. It had a lot of multi-layered issues involved, from sexuality and gender, but also to human rights and homophobia, and I just didn't know how to deal with it. So how I dealt with it was I left Milwaukee, I moved to Chicago. That was really kind of what happened. Like now in retrospect, I really realized that was I wanted to leave the city anyway. I knew, and return to Chicago, but that was really the thing that pushed me. That was just like, you need to get out of here, just to sort of sort things out. The 9/11 thing, that was again like a day-to-day thing where you were constantly smelling it. You were seeing, like from my window in Brooklyn, I was seeing the towers smoke for days afterwards. I had to close my window, couldn't look out the window. Which had been a beautiful view of the 2 towers. And it was hard. Still working at the store and just seeing people. I feel like I really saw the city reset. It really was ground zero. It really was this. It was the end of something, and it took the city a while, years, really. I feel, to readjust to it. Accept it, move on, remorse. I have some issues about how it's still dealing with it, like the lights every year still, and that kind of thing. But people need to do what they need to do. And at the time too, like after it happened, I witnessed a lot of people leave New York. So that felt, and the decision to stay, I felt was really me trying to take a ownership in it. Where I felt like for a number of years when I moved here, I fought it. I fought New York. Because it was really a love-hate thing. And I was just like, I love this place, but I was just like, I can't stand it sometimes. Just people and noise and smell and whatever. Like,
had you visited before that?
I visited before. I dated a guy that had lived here when I was in Chicago, so I was coming back and forth for a while, and realized that I had been in love with it even though I didn't know. Because you see it in print and TV and commercials. You see it in film. You see it everywhere. And you don't really necessarily realize it. But it is, when people think of a city or people think of a crime drama or whatever, like, it's New York. If you think of a comedy, it's New York. And you don't really...
It's very iconic.
It's very iconic, and I don't think you realize that until you move here. And then you really are in it, and you're like, oh, yeah, every stereotype that I've seen on TV about New York really exists. It really exists. Good or bad, funny or depressing, whatever. Like, it all is here.
Depending on where you're at, what neighborhood you're at, and all that, who you're around, and it varies.
And I felt like, talking about, like, the city resetting, like, it really... I feel like New York is very class based, and that event leveled that for a minute. It is now 15, almost 15 years later, like, it's reestablished itself really more deeply than ever. but I felt like at the time, like it really brought people together in a unique way. Yeah. And people didn't know what to do, so people were dealing with it. And, you know, a lot of the things that I was being struck by were, you know, images of missing people everywhere.
Did you know anybody?
I didn't know anyone. So that was the thing. Like I wasn't directly, you know, affected by it. However, you weren't, just because you were a part of the city, and you had to then move through it and move through other people who had, you know, really close encounters with it on different, you know, to different degrees. So all that I, you know, definitely fuse into writing, and, you know, because my writing is sort of a broken, sort of half notebook, half daydream, half spoken word, half rap, half, you know, again, trying to fuse. A lot of things that I do is about fusion. Trying to fuse it, because I feel like one of my earliest memories or earliest experiences with DJing was, you know, when I first learned to blend two records together.
Yes, that's exciting. You know, I've DJed. That's amazing.
You know, it's an amazing feeling when you are in that in between state. When you have, you know, you have this moment that's happening, and then you bring in this other element, and then you can have these two things coexisting for a while, you know, and your ability to then move between these two. You know, so I feel like I try to translate that sort of aspect into my art, be it writing, be it visual, be it sound, because I like that space. So a lot of the music that I like, also I feel resonates in that way, in this sort of in between space, or this sort of nebulous world where you might not know what's exactly going on, or you might not know what you're listening to, but it emotes a certain feeling.
Is it more? Is it more of a challenge, going back to when you first started DJing, as you go into it? I'm going to be in a house club DJing for people who love house music, as opposed to, I have all different kinds of genres of music. I'm going to put all those together. What is the challenge, or are there challenges in?
I don't understand. Like,
is there more of a challenge when you know you're going to be playing to people who want to hear one type of music, which is, say, house music, as opposed to what you're doing?
It's not it is a challenge. Yeah, I feel like I can approach that challenge creatively. Because I've had the experiences of, in Chicago, I DJ'd at a bar called Empty Bottle. That's like a venue bar. But we had a Sunday night gig, and through that lasted 5 years or something like that, every Sunday night. And through that, one of the main things was that we weren't going to play house. There's about 5 or 6 of us. The collective was called Daily Dragon. Included some of the members from Tortoise. That I just met casually hanging out at the bars, or, you know, whatever, coming into the record shop. So that's what we were playing. That was sort of the mission. It was more almost like a reggae night. But then it started to fuse into a jungle night, because it was 95, it was 96, it was of the time. And it was really amazing to watch these indie rock kids dancing to jungle, you know, all night, every Sunday night, or like really watching that grow in the city. And that sort of thing where we're just like, yeah, there's tons of house clubs and there's tons of house DJs, but so let's do something that's not. But then it did grow into a dance party, even though it wasn't necessarily designed for that. Or like, I mean, that's kind of one sort of abstract example. Another one is I just DJ'd, filled in for a friend of mine at this bar on the Lower East Side called Fig 19. And, you know, 2 days before the gig, the bartender was like, "Oh, it's a private party that wants to hear top 40. That wants to hear top 40 all night." Okay. So I get there, you know, and I talk to the guy that it's his birthday. He's like, "Oh, can you play top 40 hip hop?" He's like, "Everybody loves top 40 hip hop." I'm like, "Okay, sure." Yeah. So, you know, so for me, it's like, I'm not opposed to that. I know that music. I appreciate that music, you know, and I feel like there is some value in it. And this was sort of like, this is the perfect time to explore it then. You know, so as a DJ, I didn't personally have all this stuff. You know, it's not something that, all the stuff that I
just keep around.
Kind of keep them, right. I would keep like top 40 hip hop just around.
Why not, Daniel? You never know, right?
Right, you never know. So, but, you know, we're in the age, you know, where 2 days before, like, when I got the news, I was like, okay, kind of a little freaking out. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to download Spotify.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do. And, you know, and so then that gave me the library then to work with. Yeah. So I have to worry about the song. I had to worry about getting the songs, which was fine. Yeah. Now I could just, like, curate a night based on, you know, having these songs at my disposal. Yeah. You know, and it's fun. Like, I love 808s. You know, the drum machine, the 808. Like, I love it, and hip hop loves it right now. So, you know, I love bassy music. You know, it has all these. So I had a good time. They had a great time. You know, and that was like, that's really what it was about. It's Scott's birthday. It's not about my ego and what I want to do and what I want to play and I want to, you know, whatever. Let's all have a good time. Yeah.
But you're still fitting yourself.
But I'm still, right. But I'm still coming at it, you know, in a creative way. I'm not just completely being like, okay, I'm just going to hit play and just let you guys, you know, just go on autopilot. I'm still actively, you know, trying to match moods, keep feelings, you know, alive, or like, you know, just take people still on a journey, even though this is the limitations or the parameters that I'm given. Okay. So it can be fun. It can be completely irritating. You know, when you're in a situation where the people that hired you want to direct you.
Okay. Yes.
Instead of letting you do what you were paid to do and let you be the artist. Yeah. You know, it does get frustrating when people are like, you know, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you play? You know, but again, like, that is part of it. That's depending on the situation. Yeah. You know, sometimes they have the right to, and sometimes they're just completely self-absorbed. Yeah. You know,
so for your own music, how do you create your music on, or how do you?
I create it through a combination of software, live instrumentation. Like, I mean, I play some percussion. I can bang on things and create sounds. But I also have, you know, some synthesizers, some keyboards, a Moog that I use, as well as I try to incorporate live musicians when I can. Okay. I don't have a studio. I have a, you know, small home setup, and
that's all you need.
And that's all I needed. You know, for years I made 3 records that way. Yeah. You know, having people come in, setting up a mic, you know, and hoping nobody rings the doorbell or you know, whatever. Like,
you working on anything now? Or?
Musically, I've kind of. My last song was like 5 years ago, called Egress, which I felt like I spent 2 years on it. I toured Europe with it even prior to it being released. And it became a situation where the label was sort of beginning to shrink in a way. As far as its roster of artists and as far as the involvement from the owner. The whole thing began to shrink. But in the midst of that, my record was coming out. And it came out and it got reviewed in The Wire. And, you know, it got reviewed and it got cool. Some attention. However, I felt like I just felt kind of depleted after the whole thing. Yeah. you know, kind of
because of everything that went into it in the
and
label
then sort
process.
of the return of it, and then sort of how the label could then sort of drop it.
Yeah,
not necessarily drop it like, you know, it was the only one that didn't come out on vinyl. It was CD only.
Okay.
You know, it came out at a point where vinyl was on a downward slide.
Yeah,
it is now, you know, sort of triple rows above that. But for a while, it was like it was out of fashion, or it was sort of like, oh, digital music's gonna kill everything. So it was released sort of in that era, you know, mid 2000s, late 2000s, and I just felt like I can't turn around and put all this energy into another record. I wanted to do something that didn't, because I realized that so much of what I was doing was based around music. Okay, I was DJing, I was doing sound for choreographers and people. I was working at the store. You know, I was performing. I was doing all these things, and I just needed something else. Yeah. So I started. Or I got certified to be a personal trainer. Oh, okay. Like, that was sort of one thing that it sort of helped me through the years, too. Like, sort of deal with it. Just sort of, I was like, I need to get out of the house. I need to go somewhere else. Yeah. I need to just do something else, use another part of my brain. So that really, you know, and then I realized that I really loved it, which I didn't expect. Yeah. How
long you been doing that?
I mean, I've been working out, like, you know, about 6 years now. I've been I got certified about 4 years ago. Okay. And then sort of on and off, I've been training people. And right now I'm working on, hopefully next year, like, starting to develop a sort of a CrossFit portable class that can move around from outside to inside to different studios and different spaces. So I'm working on that now. Okay. So musically, but then I'm also like, music opportunities still continue to come. Earlier this year, I was in Denmark, performed with this band Afterklang, and had the opportunity to work with like a 40-piece orchestra for this live show. Okay, great. And then I'm also working on a collaborative piece for I-Beam Gallery. That's going to be a sort of multi-screen video sound piece, sort of about sort of I would say kind of the undiscovered artists in New York. Okay, people that you don't necessarily not necessarily wouldn't expect, but don't. Just how you were saying, like, you didn't know. You just approached me about doing this interview about my top 10 because I worked at the record store, but you didn't know that I had this whole other thing. Yeah. You know, and that's sort of what the video piece sort of comments on. You know, how the artist has to, at some level, or can at some level, compromise themselves in order to exist in the world and survive in the world. Yeah. You know, when the art isn't necessarily helping support them. Okay. Compromising. Compromising as far as like compromising your time. Okay. You have to split your time. Yes. You have to learn how to juggle. You know, but I've always sort of done that. I've always worked at the store, but then always done other stuff too, from DJing to performance to other stuff. So I appreciate that aspect, I can see a product from, you know, from the origin to the final result. Okay. You know, from, you know, you read about it or you think about it and you create it, and then you can, then you see it being in the production stages, and then you then see it like on the shelves, and then you see like what the response is and what people take from it. Okay. So it's an interesting spectrum to be in. Okay. So you enjoying more the collaborative art now as opposed to? I love collaborating, and collaborating forces me to work. Where I don't always force myself to work.
Yes.
You know, and I've always been appreciative of others. And that was something that, you know, when I was first approached about making music, the first thing was just like, okay, I have a list of 20 people that I want to be involved. Yeah. You know, on this level, from helping me design this or like articulate this visually to I need a cello or I need, you know, whatever, a flute or, you know, I need these things. But it was also, for me, it was about these were the people that I knew and I loved too. And I wanted to then sort of thank them for opening me up, especially a lot of the jazz musicians that I knew. It was really about me reciprocating like this. Because it had been nights that, you know, they had completely blown my mind and taken me completely to other worlds. And I wanted to then bring them into my world, too, and let them, and see what happens then. You know, I know where they could take me, so now let me take them somewhere. So I've always been into collaborative work.
Okay, great.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So my introduction to you is because my gym is across the street from other music.
Right.
Yes, yeah. And I got back into vinyl last year, so that's why I come in there all the time. And I started going to the website and saw your name on many of the reviews, and I'm like, oh, okay, a lot of the stuff I would try out because I think is a good reviewer. If there's somebody you know you can read the reviews and you're gonna like for within these. So I wanted to bring you on and have you talk about your top 10 albums of the year. Now we're gonna utilize Spotify, which I'll have in the show list since I don't actually own rights to. Yes, I have to get on my staff about that. So we're gonna do that, and so if you want to start.
Yeah, so I kept that in mind, the whole Spotify thing. So I did choose things that I knew would be on Spotify because I definitely, we do this thing at the store where every month it's supposed to be like a top 10 of the month. You know, every month mine is like 15, 20, 25 sometimes, depending on how I'm feeling. You know, it's definitely summertime is usually a lot more. So I have, that being said, I have some issues with 10 or limiting these sort of lists. These sort of these are 10 essential this, or these are the 10 best that, or, you know, I'm like, no, the world, there's too much music and the world is too big. There's no reason why they could just be 10 of whatever. But I did try to keep it down to 10. And it's a mixed bag, and I would definitely say these were records that moved me in some particular way, or got me excited in different ways, or just not, you know, didn't necessarily become my daily soundtrack, but you know, since I work out a lot, I realized my music taste has changed slightly. Where I've always been into really bassy music, but now it's we're talking about the top 40 pop stuff. Yeah. Why do I know the top 40 pop stuff? Because that's good music for the gym. You know, about 130 beats per minute, some bass.
Get you going.
Get me going. Yeah. You know, could be a singer, could be a rapper, whatever. So some things I know I listen to or I appreciate because of that. Because I like music that you can use in different settings too. So we can talk about that. Okay. So, and it's definitely not in any order. I'm not going to start at number 1 or I'm not starting at number 10.
No Casey Kasem here.
I'm just, these are 10 thoughts.
Yeah, and I want facts on each.
I got little notes. I have little notes, so we can talk about kind of what it means to me or what I sort of see. I like to put things in context. That's one of the things I enjoy about writing for the website and reviewing records is I like to. You can read a review and you cannot know what the record sounds like at all. Okay. You cannot know anything about the person, or you cannot know why the reviewer is even writing about this record. Which I feel like any review I write, I try to, one, have some sort of relationship to the music. I don't like to. I won't even really. Not that I won't, but I try not to touch things that I don't have any interest in, because I don't feel like that. I'm not bringing anything to it. I'm just gonna try not to trash it. Throughout the review, because I don't like it for whatever reason. So I definitely try to choose things that I like to write about. And I like to put them in a context where I feel like I've been in the music business long enough and in retail music business long enough that I've seen so many trends. I've seen different, subgenres come and go and grow. And every year I like to, with the top 10 or with the year end, I like to then sort of sum up the year as far as like kind of as a movement, as a sonic movement, what's happened. People talk about, oh, this was a game-changing release and this, that, or whatever. Like, yeah, there are some, and then there's, definitely things that are of the time, of the technology that couldn't have been created before, probably won't be definitely exactly explored again because, technology is always growing, people's ears are always changing. So I like to reflect that. In the top 10.
So what we'll do is, I guess this will be the great setup. You'll tell me what it is, talk about, we'll play a little, which we'll edit out later. And then we'll talk about it. So what's first up?
So first up is FKA Twigs.
I know.
LP1. And for me, I was always a fan of Bjork. And a fan of, Aaliyah and Tricky and, trip hop in the 90s and that kind of stuff. And somehow subgenres come and go and how people's ears change and sound develops. I feel like the Twigs record was a great example of what could be done post Bjork. Not that she's as weird yet. I feel like she could get there. But I feel like it's a good starting point of this idea of, again, fusion of soul, of classical, of new age, of technology, of all those elements being of lust, of of longing, of all these things can all coexist, and I felt like she really created this original sound. I saw her twice this year. I saw her at Pitchfork in Chicago, which was outdoors, which was interesting because I felt like a lot of it was lost because it was outdoors. And her music, it has a lot of space in it, and it's full, but it's full in a very atmospheric way, as opposed to a very busy way. But then I saw her again at Webster Hall, maybe 2 months after that, right around the time the record came out, and I thought it was amazing, completely hypnotizing. In an enclosed space, you really got to be inside the sort of womb that her sound creates. And I feel like she is onto something. The record for me too, I like music that I can listen to without necessarily being completely distracted by. I like to listen to stuff on the train or whatever, and most of the time I don't necessarily need, especially after a day at work and being in the store and listening to music for 8 hours. I like things that necessarily don't have beats, has a lot of space, has a lot of texture, but still has a soul to it. And I felt like that was like she provided that for me this year, where before maybe the XX had done it, or even The Weeknd to some extent.
It feels like it's immersive. Like a tone poem, because it's like listening to one song of it doesn't feel right. Like you have to listen to it collectively.
Exactly.
Like it's an album. It's an actual album.
And I'm really a fan of albums, as opposed to, so much of dance culture is based on 12 inches and singles. Which I can appreciate a good song, sure, but I like albums. I like artists with complete thoughts to flush out and really create something. And I feel like she did that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So what do you have up next?
Next, sort of following. Well, okay, we'll jump off of Twigs with Arca.
Okay.
Which one of the producers involved in the Twigs record. Mm-hmm. His record Zen was. I like this idea of future music. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was his record. Really was like hearing Aphex Twin for the first time.
Okay.
Or like the first time I really heard Flying Lotus, specifically like Cosmogramma. Okay. Like this idea of like, again, like this artist that can create this world. Mm-hmm. Totally immersive, completely, original, again, based on technology and sound design. And it's something that I don't feel could have necessarily been created before 2014 or 2013, probably when it was made. It's definitely of the time, and it's definitely like a new music.
Okay. Is that a technology thing, you think, or just the natural his sound and what he's doing for?
I think he uses technology to create. Like he definitely is pushing. He's trying to push sound into new areas. Yeah. Where a cello isn't necessarily a cello or doesn't sound like a cello anymore. Doesn't have the tonal structure that you associate with a cello. But, that might be the base of the sound. But then it is processed in a way that then morphs it into something else. And I felt like the two definitely, as a pair, the Twigs record and his record, like worked together in sort of a vocal version and then almost an instrumental version, of if you take away the vocals, sort of what this world would sound like. Okay. So those are the first two.
And he's supposed to be working with Bjork.
Exactly.
So I'm very interested in hearing that.
Right, and it makes sense, for her. Because she's always been, like Madonna and like Kanye West, which actually the Arca worked on Yeezus, yes. Which I thought was a really amazing sonic record. But Bjork always, hones in on a certain type of underground electronic artist, someone that seemingly comes from like a kind of academic process. And he has that. Like the record's like definitely has like I would say has soul to it, but it is in a very heady way. It is in this more like get in your head and explore what you're hearing. Okay. As opposed to necessarily like being body music that would move you in a certain way.
Cool. What do you have up next?
Next, sort of jumping off of that, Vessel and his album Punish Honey.
I haven't heard of this. So.
Okay, so Vessel is a Bristol-based producer from England. His second record for the Triangle label. And on this record, the first one I would say was definitely more in the kind of haunting, dubby, atmospheric world. This one still has that aspect, yet a lot of the sounds were homemade. So we're talking about like processing, where like the Arca record, it really has this kind of processed feel to it. The Vessel record has a very earthy, organic feel to it. So he's using like, bicycle parts for flutes. He's using like sheet metal for percussion. He's exploring like what to do outside of the computer. How to create, as an electronic producer, how do you create something if you don't have electronics? So he's exploring that idea. And so the record comes out, it's instrumental, it's definitely has an industrial sort of aspect to it. has a little bit of a post-punk kind of vibe to it, just because it's sort of angular. I wouldn't say jangly, but like more angular, more visceral. Like you kind of feel the intention of him banging on stuff, or like, you know, trying to create this motif or this energy. So those were aspects that I really enjoyed about it, and I do like, you know, generally darker music. So I felt like this was a good combination of those elements of the dark aspect, but then also of this organic industrial world, and this homemade sound aspect, one-man band kind of vibe as well.
Where does most of your music discovery come from? Working in the store, or
combination of things. Like, I mean, a lot of things come just through my hands every day. But then I also read a lot of blogs. Okay.
What do you read? What are some of your favorites?
I like the ones I check every day. Not necessarily in this order, but I check
randomly.
I check Pitchfork. I check The Fader. I check OK Player. I check Trap Magazine. I check Herb, Accelerator, Boomcat, Bleep, which are more stores. There's a website called Truancy. There's one called Big Up Magazine. I like a lot of, I'm definitely partial to UK music. Okay. Music coming out of England, Germany, not necessarily exclusively, but I just through the years I've always, pretty much since like Soul to Soul, back in like '89, like from then on I was all about like Black British music. You know, and then that led me into Massive Attack and Drinking Again, you know, through the years. But I've also kept up with like, you know, jungle through the years, and I love mixes. I love DJ mixes. Yeah. So I like websites that give away DJ mixes. Okay.
And you've mentioned some of those, right?
You know, okay. So all those websites, you know, that's kind of how I found out about them on some level. Okay. Was like searching for a certain DJ and then realized they did a mix for Trap Magazine. Okay, so I wound up looking at Trap all the time because I'm looking to see who did their mixes. Okay, or Dummy. Actually, I like Dummy a lot. Facts Magazine. Okay. I like that as well.
And we'll put all that in the show notes so people can get into the mind of Daniel Gibbons some more.
Yeah, that's all the vlogs.
Wait, what do you have next?
So we talked about FK Twigs, Vessel, Arca. Shabazz Palaces.
Okay, yes.
Which is a favorite of mine.
I bought that because of you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure.
I'm sure they should appreciate that as well. Actually going to see them tomorrow night.
Oh, okay.
At Hammerstein with Blood Orange. So Shabazz Palaces, a duo from Seattle, led by Ishmael Butler, who was originally in Diggable Planets, which I loved to death at the time.
Blood was amazing.
Blood is definitely still one of my favorite hip-hop records of the 90s and in general. Yeah. Definitely still slept on. But Shabazz Palaces blew my mind. Amazing, like, second record, psychedelic, you know, cloud rap meets like heady P-funk kind of vibe, like just so many things going on that I really loved. Again, like a whole album, like, you know, these 2-minute songs, 1-minute tracks that just blend into each other and then just keep moving into these different rooms of sound, and I thought it was really great. You know, again, more cerebral than body, but I love those type of records that, you know, make your brain cells tingle and create these images in your head, and don't, you know, dumb you down.
Yeah. So what constitutes What makes a favorite album of the year? Is it the album you play every day for like a month and then you don't listen to it anymore, or you keep coming, or an album you keep coming back to?
It's records I keep coming back to. It's records that provoke a certain anticipation and fulfill that anticipation. Okay. I mean, there's records that I've gotten excited about and then completely have hated. I won't name names, but yeah. So that for me, that's what. Those two things, as well as something that a record that I feel like encapsulates a sound of the year. Okay. You know, like none of the things I've talked about so far, I feel like capture that aspect yet of a sound of the year. But the next one, which would be Azealia Banks.
Oh, God. I love that album. You know, I really...
Broke with Expensive Taste.
Yes, I'm loving that album. I'm constantly...
It's I got it like maybe a week, not even a week ago, like 4 days ago or something. And I played it at the gym. I played it at home. Yes. I played it on the subway. I played it everywhere. And that's a record for me that is very 2014. Even though it sounds like it's 91 or something, but it is like it's such a reflection of the youth of today. You know, and she's 23 maybe or something, and it just reflects like their fascination with the 90s, with the late 80s, with the 90s. You know, even Taylor Swift's record is 1989. Yeah. You know, and I joked with a friend. I was like, this is more 1989 than Taylor Swift's record is. You know, but I'm excited about the record because I feel like Azealia is someone who has fought the industry already. Debut album just out. You know, but it's been a 5-year struggle. Yeah. She's fought with labels. She's fought with people that wanted to, you know, style her in certain ways or, you know, just pigeonhole her.
Yeah, because this is on her own.
And this is on her own. This is after winning a battle to get her rights back from her former label, too. You know, and then to put the record out and then for it to be this amazing sonic creation where she's, you know, it's almost, it's like a combination of, I mean, you can think of it in a way where it's a combination of like Kanye's Yeezus and Beyonce's Beyonce. Yeah. Where it's a self-release thing with no sort of advance, you know, that just exploded onto the screen. But then it's the sonic assault of all these minds kind of put together with her in control, you know, similar to Kanye. But then she's pulling in Machine Drum and Ariel Pink and Pearson Sound. And she's pulling like these A-rap music. Yeah. Like all these people that lesser known underground DJs, Lone even. Like, you know, she's pulling these people that no one's really tapped into yet she's making their music sound like so pop. Yeah. You know, and these are like underground electronic music artists that have been like making their 12 inches and doing their tracks and putting up their YouTube clips and, you know, whatever. And she's like, no, this is like what I want to rap over. And what she's doing with the tracks, I feel like, I was like, okay, all of a sudden MIA isn't as weird anymore. Yeah. Nicki Minaj isn't as weird anymore. You know, Missy, like the ghost of Missy Elliott is like risen or something. You know, it's like it's bringing all those type of things. Even Janelle Monáe, like this weird fantastical vision of sound and song structure, and I can rap in Latin for this for like a minute on this track, and you know, it's amazing.
Cohesive,
and it's cohesive,
and it's cohesive too.
Yeah, and it really, I feel like it is like the sound of this year, and just encapsulate that energy.
Yeah. And what I liked about it, like, even though you have the songs that have like the early 90s sound, it doesn't sound like she's just aping the sounds. Like she still puts her own stamp on it. It feels very current.
Yeah. It feels throwback in a way. Because I even listened to it today and I texted a friend. I was like, I hear Delight.
Yeah.
In some of this. You know, I hear Lady Miss Cure. It has that kind of like funness to it that I feel has been missing in a lot of hip hop too. This sort of unabashed like goofiness, but then articulated in a very particular and very like spot on way, from like the piano rolls to the way the song breaks down to whatever. Like you know, one of my favorite songs is BBD, where she's like, you know, she says something about she mentions New Edition, then she mentions Michael Bivins, and then she mentions BBD. Yeah. You know, and it's like
you can get more like 90s,
right? You know, but it's like it's so much fun. So that's why it made it, even though like I said, I've heard it for like the last 4 days.
Yeah. I've already included it on mine.
But it was an instant. Some records have that sort of vibe too, where you're just like, oh my god, this is so like exactly what I wanted. And didn't know I wanted.
Yes, I totally.
Because I didn't think I would like it as much.
Yeah, I didn't, because the stuff I heard over the years of her, I was just like, oh, okay, that's nice. Like, but it didn't excite me.
Right.
And I was like, well, I'm still gonna listen to this album. And then when I did, I'm like, oh, okay, there's another. And like every time I come back to it, like something else connects more with me. So
yeah, and I like records that do that slowly reveal themselves. Because even the Twigs record, the first time I heard the Twigs record, I was like, where is it? Yeah. I got through the whole thing and I was just like, what happened? Like, where'd it go? You know, and it took me a few listens, and then even before I saw her, just listening to the record, it took me a few listens in different settings, different times of day, whatever. And then all of a sudden it clicked and I was like, oh, I get what you're doing. Yeah. Or all of a sudden it like, something in my head went like, oh, this is what it is. Yeah. It's not this. So don't thinking about it. Stop thinking about it this way. Is actually this, you know, and that's kind of where the Bjork thing came in. Like all of a sudden I was like, oh yeah, that's what this is. Yeah. Or like that's the lineage it's coming out of, more so than thinking about it as like, oh, she's like an R&B pop singer. Yeah. And what's this weird record? You know, it's like, no, she's going arty. She's arty. So think of it that way. And then it made more sense. Yeah.
Great. What do you have next?
What do I have next? Another one. Okay, jumping off of Azealia Banks, this is sort of another kind of a pop thing. But this guy, Popcaan. Okay. Who's Jamaican vocalist, dancehall. What did I write my notes? Yeah. So this record, again, like came out in the middle of the summer, which for me is the perfect time for reggae. There's always sort of, I wish every year that a reggae record happens every summer that really lasts the whole summer. Okay. For me, that was this record. Before it was the like Hoolie Buzz or something like that. Like I can like poppy dance hall when it comes from like I love like Major Lazer. You know, Diplo I like and I appreciate, but I really like his Major Lazer project. So this was sort of coming out of that, like energetic, but then also very spiritual minded, soulful, edgy production, not typical. And my joke about that record was that, this is finally there's like a good dance hall record that doesn't have Diplo on it. You know, it came from that. Yeah, it came right because he has his hands in, you know, lots of stuff lots of great stuff. But for me, that was sort of a thing about it too. I was like, okay, yeah, this is just this guy who hooked up with this crew, Mix Pack, you know, and let them produce a whole record, and it really sounds like the mixture between Brooklyn and Jamaica. Okay. You know, my time when I lived in Brooklyn, like that's one of the things that I really loved about New York, actually, was the connection that the Caribbean had to New York. Okay. Just seeing it, hearing it, you know, the West Indian Parade, like all that kind of stuff. Like, so when I hear dancehall, I'm looking for that sort of spark. Or that sort of something that, you know, it might be a little nostalgia or whatever, but something that really like, you know, has that's not, you know, being a black gay man, like I feel like I shouldn't like the reggae in a way because reggae doesn't like me. However, you know, why can't I? Yeah. So I am looking for a certain type of thing, you know, when I listen to it. And Popcaan came with a smart, like I said, like a spiritual edge to it that really was cool.
It's a debut?
It was, I believe it's his debut record, as far as I know. He has done some tracks on Major Lazer records or whatever, but as far as I know, that was his debut.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to look forward to trying that out. What do you have up next?
Next, Andy Stott.
Okay.
Faith in Strangers. The name of the Popcaan record, by the way, is Where We Come From.
Okay.
But Andy Stott, Faith in Strangers.
Why do I know his name?
He's been around. This is his, I don't even know what number record this is. Maybe his 4th or 5th.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what he necessarily considers albums, but he's done a couple over the last 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. He's done some really amazing, one definite album, and then one sort of, there was like a double 12-inch that was then put together on CD.
Okay.
Called Passing Me By and We Stay Together. Mm-hmm. And then the album Luxury Problems, and now Faith in Strangers. Faith in Strangers is it's one of those records that I was looking forward to all year, but when I listened to it, it blew me away in a way I didn't expect. Mm-hmm. I knew I would like I knew that I would like it.
Yeah.
However, I didn't know what he had in mind either. He works with a vocalist who was his piano teacher originally.
Oh, really?
And they create this. Andy Stott kind of comes out of dub techno. Mm-hmm. He's like a dubby techno producer. But over the last couple of years, what he's been doing is sort of deconstructing that framework into a very earthy, sludgy, bassy atmosphere. So he's starting to do that, but still kind of have this throb and pulse of techno, but stretching it out a lot, really messing with the form, and then at times bringing in this vocalist. So on this record, Luxury Problems, that all sort of came to a really pinnacle moment as an album. Like all those kind of sonic ideas. And now he sort of takes that and he takes that element, but then adds this other layer of like song structure to it, where the lyrics go from being where previously they might have been more abstract, fragmented. Now the vocalist is really presenting more songs, more lyrical melodies. But it still has the sludgy element to it, as well as mixing in now this sort of idea of post-punk. This kind of throbby sort of vibe where, I guess my joke about this record is that it's the record that it sounds like it should be the next Portishead record. Where Portishead Third sort of took their blueprint and shifted it into this sort of, we've been listening to United States of America or Apples and Stereo or Stereo Lab even. Like it has those sort of elements to it, the Portishead record does. Andy Stott's record, again, like if you can imagine that element, like someone listening to all those things and then even pushing it further into this sort of marriage between those ideas and like dirgy techno. As well as like kind of mixing in some industrial aspects and some drum and bass kind of vibes throughout it. Again, I think it's a really beautiful album that moves in different, again, like has different ideas that it touches on. I feel like, except for the exception of one song, it I think is flawless, and the mood it maintains a mood throughout the whole thing.
I like that. Let me check that. Is that a part? I know you mentioned contextualization earlier. Is that a part of enjoying the record when you know the story behind it for you? Because I kind of like that for myself. That I do.
I feel like, you know, in the age before the internet, when all you had was the record, maybe a magazine article or something, but really mostly all you had was the record, you know, and you had, you know, and then you would create this idea of like what this was, what was happening in this space that created this music. And one of the things I love about other music is sort of being, you know, I've had that interest through the years. Like I always looked at like album credits, and like, even as a kid, I always looked at credits and like matched like, oh, this label and this person worked on this record and this record.
Yes,
and, like,
I was always doing that.
Love that. You know, and one of the things I really appreciate about other music is that we are able to. People come to us kind of looking for that, sort of. You know, they want to know what this thing is.
Well, it's nothing worse when you go into stores and they have no, like, what's this record?
I mean, you can't know every record. Yeah. Sure. You cannot know every record. You know, but if it's something that we are interested in, for me, that's really, I really love that. I really love, like, you know, at the store we write these little cards. Like, I love writing little cards, like, just, like, kind of summing up something in, like, 4 lines. Yeah. Or, you know, how to really, not necessarily even sell this record, but just explain this thing to another person who may or may not know the references, but, you know, try to get into the idea of what is happening.
Because I think just reading those can even be like, okay, well, I haven't heard this, but I'll try it out.
Because you can get an idea. Or it sparks your curiosity in a certain way. Where you're like, oh, I don't completely understand what that means, but something about that sounds interesting. It intrigues me in a certain way. Yeah.
Exactly.
But as far as, like I like knowing backstories. I like knowing, like, one thing I always do in my reviews, which is just a little personal funny thing, is that I like to include the names, the real names of people.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because so many people are like DJ such and such, or DJ, you know, or just like these one word like Vessel, or whatever, like Arca or FK Twigs, you know. But these are all people, So I like to have this sort of human aspect to it, and take them out of their alias, and take them out of and be like, this is this person that is doing this thing, and this is what they're trying to accomplish, or this is what they have accomplished, and this is what it reminds me of, or this is what it sounds like. But trying to get away from the mythical producer thing. This is a guy, probably in his bedroom. You know what I mean? Just trying to break it down, because I'm like, I can identify with all these guys, because I'm that guy too. You know, I've been that guy. So I like to just kind of, you know, keep it interesting for me on that level.
Well, it does that. What do you have up next?
I don't know how many that's been so far.
We at 6?
I think I'm 6. Francis Bebey. This is a reissue.
I have not heard of Francis.
Okay,
Bebey.
So Francis Bebey, one of my favorite musicians, is from Cameroon originally. Had been a writer, musician. I think he wrote a play at some point. Actor. Multi-talented artist, you know, left Cameroon, went to England, I believe, and then, you know, started his painting career or whatever. But his record, there's a compilation. There's been 2. The latest compilation called Psychedelic Sanza is beautiful Cameroonian music. He plays what does he play? He plays an mbira, thumb piano for the most part. He does some singing, plays a little bit of guitar. Very hypnotic. You know, it's world music just because it, you know, is sort of an indigenous sound. Yet he does this technique of sort of overblowing when he's singing that makes his voice sound distorted or treated. And it might sound like, oh, that's kind of like his, like, kind of a, not necessarily cliche, but it's sort of like his, like, oh, that's his thing that he does or whatever. But it really creates this very visceral, intense, emotive, like energy when he does it through the songs. The music has a bit of a blues and a bit of a jazz kind of vibe to it. Not so much Afrobeat, not so much Fela, like hard drums, funky kind of vibe. Smoother or more very smooth, very more, I would think, more like, you know, swaying in a hammock kind of vibe. Okay. Like, definitely more hypnotic, more kind of swirly, psychedelic stuff. But he's been, definitely, he's written books on African music that I discovered, you know, early in college. And it's really exciting for me to see his music come back around. Okay.
When did this come out?
It came out earlier the original year? Ooh, or what period? 70s.
Okay.
70s. I don't know the exact year.
Okay. And both compilations are from 70s or?
Both compilations are from, actually, no, this one is from, I think it's from 70s through maybe 85.
Okay.
The psychedelic Sanza.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know, definitely doesn't sound dated in any sense. Like, just sounds kind of just of its own sort of magic.
Okay. Great. What do you have up next?
Mr. Mitch.
Mr.
Mitch, Parallel Memories, which actually hasn't come out yet. It comes out like December 3rd or something.
Okay. Well, that'd be fine because when this airs, it will be...
Right, it should be out. But there's been, like I was saying about me being really interested in Black British music. You know, I followed it from, you know, like I said, like from soul to soul to a lot of UK hip hop to the birth of grime. Well, even before that, drum and bass, jungle, you know, hardcore or whatever, into grime. Grime started off as the UK version of hip hop.
Yeah.
You know, really, I would say birthed around 2000 or so. Dizzy Rascal, Wiley, Roots Manuva, even. But through the years, I would say it kind of got a bad name by like 94, 95. Okay. Like, it was kind of like you didn't really, you know, the streets maybe, or something like that.
Did he give it a bad name?
I wouldn't say I like the streets, but I feel like that was sort of like the very pop. It had reached its pop potential with the streets and Dizzy Rascal. You know, all that stuff had kind of blown up.
So like when disco manifested as Bee Gees.
Right, exactly. Okay. Sure, right. Same kind of idea. Yeah, sort of same kind of idea.
And I'm saying nothing negative about the Bee Gees because I like the Bee Gees.
Right,
but, yeah.
Sure. I was just thinking as far as like, you know, thinking like Dizzy Rascal was one of the people that, you know, was one of the originators of the music, and he wrote it into the pop. Okay. You know, sunset or whatever. Like, he wrote it all the way into the end. Yeah. And then had to sort of reboot himself. But what's been happening in the UK is sort of split now. The scene is sort of split into, you know, vocal grime and like really rapid fire MCs, British, you know, very heavy accents, very rapid fire British MCs. And then the other side of it is the production side of it. And it's these producers that, you know, even Arca's record and Twigs hint at this, this idea of sort of grime, sort of the idea of like grime made with new age sounds. Okay. So instead of like, a lot of it has more kind of sort of an Asian sounding synth to it, definitely more open, less like rumbling, stumbling beats. Still have like sort of a bass pulse, but it's just more. It just feels like it's been influenced more by like new age. This record by Mr. Mitch, Parallel Memories, I feel like again like encapsulates that sound right now for 2014. it's an instrumental record that has, snippets of, 90s diva vocals or whatever, slightly chopped and screwed, but can create these really lush and really icy productions that, definitely like possess this rhythm. Like it might be like 130 beats per minute or even 160 beats per minute, but the rhythms aren't going once. Like you don't hear a drum beat beating at 160. You'll hear these other elements happening, but the whole thing is moving at 160 beats.
Okay, that sounds exciting.
If that makes makes sense. Where it's not so much relying on the drum beat to propel it. The rhythm is already set. It's just that these other things are moving in a more of an ambient way.
Okay.
Than less than about drum and bass sort of traditional sort of way.
Okay. That sounds interesting. So how did you hear it beforehand?
I work at a record store.
Okay. So when's that? December 3rd? Okay.
I believe it's December 3rd.
Okay.
I love advanced music. Just me personally, and I feel like that's one of the reasons I've always worked at record stores is that I always like to hear music. I love new release day. I love Tuesdays. I've loved Tuesdays forever. I love new music. I love hearing stuff. I think the internet has spoiled a lot of us because most of the time when we are reading about something, when we first hear about something, we're able to actually hear it.
Yes. You don't have to wait.
There's a stream of it because otherwise they wouldn't really tell you about it. It wouldn't be posted if they couldn't stream whatever it was and let you watch it or let you hear it. So I love that idea, but I love hearing the whole album. I don't like the singles. I like hearing the whole album. And so Mr. Mitch, we got in advance of it.
Okay, I look forward to it. And that was your last pick, right?
I think so.
Great. Well, we'll have all those in the show notes. One more.
I have
something on the fly.
I have an overflowing list, but
there was no Lana Del Rey.
There's no Lana Del Rey.
Yes, that's on my top 10.
Really?
Yes, I love Lana Del Rey.
I mean, not that I don't. How do I even say this? There's records. I mean, working at a record store, there's records that their reputation precedes them.
Yes.
Lana Del Rey is an example where I feel like at this point too, where I'm at, I don't need to hear everything. I don't need to sit through everyone's record.
Yes.
Let me say it that way.
Yes.
I can hear, a couple of songs, and then I know if I want to investigate it or if I don't want to investigate it. So there's some things that, and I feel like personally, as far as my list goes, there's some things that I know is going to be on everyone else's list.
Yeah.
So I purposely choose. I mean, just this kind of goes back to why I don't DJ house. It's sort of I know certain things are going to be on everyone's list. So let me think of things that meant something to me that could turn someone else on to something different. Because what's the point of every writer and every critic having all the same list?
Yeah.
It's you need to champion other things too. And that's going back to the thing where I started about the 10, limited it to 10. It's sort of there's so much music out there, especially these days. When you hear a new song every day, at least one new song every day. So how can you just sum that up into 10 things? It's pretty hard.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it to be on here. It would have so stuck out if it was on your list.
Oh, the Lana Del Rey. Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, this thinking about these things, too, I tried to think of things that definitely, resonated with me, came across it in a certain way. So, for 10, I'll do this because we're talking about how, you can look forward to something all year and then you actually not like it once it comes out. For the last couple of years, now that we're in this season, I start to look at my previous year in list for other years and just see what I talked about, see how I structured it, whatever. And so I was doing that this year, and one name that came up for 2012 and 2013 was Dean Blunt.
Okay.
Yes. Dean Blunt, used to be one half of Hype Williams with Inga Copeland. And, 2012, I had Inga Copeland and Dean Blunt collectively together as Hype Williams as like my number one of the year. Just because they had done a lot of self-releases through the year, and they did their Hyperdip album, and it just felt like I saw them live, and it just for me summed up the year. Last year, I named Dean Blunt's The Redeemer, and that was a record that I felt, again, like was an artist who had fleshed out a whole idea and made a whole complete album thought. This year, all year I was looking forward to the Dean Blunt black metal record. It comes out, and for some reason, I just can't get into it. It just, I don't know what it is about it. I mean, there's a couple of things, but for some reason, I just can't get past it. However, his former partner, Inga Copeland, released a record earlier this year. A self-release record. She did it on her own. It was vinyl only. We got maybe 50 copies of it in the store. It's called Because I'm Worth It. Again, saw her earlier this year, too, at Cameo Gallery. And she created this record that I thought was really personal, intimate. Had a mixture of, a lot of my favorite things, like, electronic rhythms. It had a dubby element. It had, kind of tart female vocals. And it just really resonated with me. As opposed to, her former partner's record, who didn't. Who didn't, right. So I would choose, so again, like talking about how like on everyone's year-end list, I feel like Dean Blunt is definitely going to be on a lot of people's lists because people have really been excited about that record. Where I feel like, for me personally, it didn't do it. Like, he's done it for me before. This record in particular didn't do it. However, I feel like his partner did. I feel like Inga really, all the aspects involved. Like, she didn't go the label route. She didn't go, because this was Dean Blunt's like major label, sort of debut or whatever, that he has sort of made it to the, top of this ladder in a certain, in a certain aspect, where she chose not to. And I appreciated that. And I appreciated her just doing her and not trying to lead anyone anywhere. Where I feel like Dean is definitely trying to lead people into like this idea of what he's about or what he can do. And I don't know. I don't want to.
And hers was more natural and organic.
Yes, exactly.
Great.
Exactly.
So there we have Daniel Givens, 10 of his favorites, or 10 of his many favorites.
10 of
many.
Yes. A small selection of many.
Yes, a small selection of many. So is there a place where you'd like people to reach out to you? Or?
I am on Facebook.
Okay.
I do have a Tumblr called First Dark. It's one ST DARK.
I'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what. Good. Well, thank you for being sure. We'll have to have you back.
Oh, yeah, anytime.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking me.
Sure. There you have it. Another episode of Talk Music Talk with my guest, Daniel Givens. Didn't I tell you guys he knows everything there is to know about music? If you want to hear all those albums that we talked about, those 10 albums, make sure you check out the Spotify playlist, which is in the show notes, and you can hear the albums plus some Daniel Givens music, which you should definitely check out. Also, you can check out his Tumblr page, which is First Dark, and that's the number 1 STDARK, and that's on Tumblr, which is a beautiful Tumblr curation that he has put together. And he posts pretty regularly, so I think you should check that out. Also, if you want to know more about the podcast, why don't you visit me online at talkmusictalk.com. Talkmusictalk.com. And if you're enjoying this podcast, you know what? You should put a ring on it. And I know the best way you can put a ring on it is by subscribing to the show on iTunes. And make sure you leave a rating and or review. That'd be greatly appreciated. That's it for another episode. Till next time, this one's for you, Liz.